Okay, let's dive right into this. Welcome to this explainer on the true foundation of the internet. Today, we're unpacking HTML. Now, a lot of people hear HTML and instantly panic, thinking about complex programming, intense algorithms, and hardcore coding. But actually, that's a massive misconception. HTML isn't a programming language at all. It doesn't make decisions, and it definitely doesn't run complex mathematical logic. Instead, think of it as the digital anatomy of a web page. It's the logical, structural skeleton that gives meaning to the entire web. And I promise you, once you understand this skeleton, the way the internet works is going to make a whole lot more sense. Here is our blueprint for today. 1. The skeleton of the web. 2. Anatomy of an HTML page. 3. Core building blocks. 4. Power of semantic HTML. 5. Tables and forms. And finally, 6. Coding like a pro. Section 1. The skeleton of the web. How HTML works. So, picture this. When you type in a website address, it kicks off a quick 3-step dance. Step 1, your browser sends a request out to a server. Step 2, that server basically says, sure thing, and sends back an HTML file. Step 3, your browser reads that file and displays the page. But here's the secret that a lot of people miss. Your browser doesn't actually see design. It doesn't inherently know what a beautiful layout looks like. It relies entirely on HTML, which, by the way, stands for Hypertext Markup Language, to tell it exactly what things are. It literally reads instructions like, this is a heading, this is a paragraph, or this is a link. It is strictly about structure. Moving on to Section 2, Anatomy of an HTML page, Standard Structure. Every single standard web page you visit follows this exact anatomical order. You can kind of think of it like a document sandwich. Right at the top, we have the doc type declaration, which just tells the browser, hey, expect modern HTML5 here. Then the HTML root element wraps around literally everything else. But the most fascinating split happens next, the head versus the body. The head is basically the invisible brain of the page. It holds critical information that you, the user, never actually see. Things like the page title for search engines or character encoding. The body, on the other hand, is the visible content. Every article, every image, and every video you look at on a page lives right inside that body element. And to build out that body, we use elements. An element is the complete, fundamental building block of HTML. It consists of 3 specific parts: an opening tag, the actual content inside, and then a closing tag to tell the browser, okay, this element is finished. These tags are wrapped in angle brackets, and you'll always spot a closing tag because it has a / right before the name. Now, what's really interesting here is that tags can also be given extra instructions. Take a standard paragraph element, the p tag, for example. Inside its opening tag, you might see something like class equals text. We call this an attribute. Attributes are absolutely incredible because they provide extra information about the element itself. In this scenario, we're labeling the paragraph with a class of text, which we could later use to easily style it with CSS. The attribute lives inside the opening tag. The content simply says hello, and then the closing p tag wraps the whole thing up. Section 3. Core building blocks, text, links, and media. Let's rapidly review your essential everyday tools. We've got headings, which range from H1 down to H6, and there is a massive rule of thumb here. You should only ever have one H1 per page because it represents the main overarching title. Then we have paragraphs, using the P tag for normal blocks of text. We organize items with lists. UL gives you unordered bullet points, and OL gives you ordered numbered steps. Next up are links, which use the H or anchor tag. These absolutely require an href attribute to tell the browser where the link actually goes. Finally, images. The img tag is totally unique because it doesn't even need a closing tag, but it does strictly require a source attribute to locate the image file and an alt attribute. That alt text is absolutely crucial. It provides a written description of the image for screen readers used by visually impaired users. It's what makes the web accessible for everyone. Now, when it comes to formatting text, we run into a really important philosophy of modern HTML. You've probably seen tags like B for bold and I for italic. Well, those just change visual style. Modern web development actually prefers tags like strong and EM for emphasis. Why? Because they carry structural meaning. They literally tell the browser, this text is fundamentally important, rather than just saying, make this look bold. Remember, HTML is all about conveying meaning, not just visual design. Section 4. The power of semantic HTML, meaning over layout. So I've got a question for you. What is the problem with using generic div tags for absolutely everything? A div is really just a generic container used to group content together. And honestly, it is incredibly common to see entire web pages built out of hundreds of div tags just infinitely nested inside each other. The problem with that approach is what developers literally call div soup. Sure, it visually holds the menu and the content together, but it gives absolutely zero meaning to the browser. A search engine looking at div soup has no idea what part of the page is the main article and what part is just a footer. Enter semantic HTML. Instead of using generic containers, we use tags that actually describe their purpose. Header, nav for navigation, main, article, and footer. This is a total game changer. It massively improves accessibility for screen readers, it heavily boosts your SEO so search engines understand your content, and it just makes your code so much easier for other human beings to read.
Section 5. Tables and forms. Data and input.
Let's talk about tables. HTML tables use very specific tags to structure data. The table tag wraps the whole thing, TR creates a row, TH makes a bold header, like name or score, and TD holds the actual data, like Alex and 85. Now, I have to issue a strict warning here. Back in the Wild West early days of the internet, people used tables to create the visual layout of entire web pages. Do not do this. It is an incredibly outdated, messy practice. Tables exist for one reason and one reason only: to display structured data, kind of like a spreadsheet. Now, when you want the user to actually talk back to you, you use a form. Forms are basically the engine behind login systems, search boxes, and payment checkouts. The form tag wraps all the elements together. Inside, the input element is incredibly versatile. For example, setting its type to text lets you collect a username. And finally, the button element, with the type set to submit, allows the user to actually send that collected data straight to the server. It is your ultimate tool for interactivity. Section 6. Coding like a pro. Best practices. Let's bring this all together. Here is what makes a web page fundamentally good. First off, use semantic HTML wherever possible. Always tell the browser what your content actually is. Second, keep your code well structured and indented. Neat code is readable code. Third, always include the alt attribute on your images for accessibility. Fourth, use your headings in a logical order. Don't just jump from an H1 to an H4 because you like the font size. And lastly, separate your concerns. HTML is strictly your structural skeleton. The visual design belongs entirely in a separate language called CSS. Let's look at how to avoid the common traps so your digital anatomy stays healthy. Watch out for missing closing tags. That will literally break your entire layout. Watch out for incorrect nesting. Remember, if you open a strong tag inside a paragraph, you absolutely must close the strong tag before you close the paragraph. Avoid div soup by not relying on generic div elements for everything. Never use tables for layout. And finally, never ignore accessibility. The web is meant for everyone, right? So this brings us to a final thought. We've clearly established that HTML is the vital, logical skeleton that gives meaning and structure to the web. It doesn't run logic, and it doesn't paint pretty pictures. It builds the rock-solid foundation. So if HTML is the skeleton, how will you use CSS and JavaScript to add the beautiful skin, styling, and interactive muscle to your next digital creation? Understanding HTML is just step one. The possibilities from here are literally endless. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep exploring and happy building.